a standardized test is based often on simply unsound assumptions, right? Like there is no definition, a workable definition of intelligence nor sentience, sapience. So how can one test for something one doesn't understand? History is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
Hey guys, I'm going to give myself the nickname K-Dub. Yesterday I listened to your episode about the hazards of standardized testing. I'm also somebody who's trying to get a new job in the technology field. I went and applied for an entry-level job, no specific certifications required or anything like that. And they called me back. The phone interview went fine and dandy with the HR person. After HR, they were like, here, we're going to send you a link to do these online tests. They are effectively job application standardized tests. I was not contacted that I didn't get the job until I spoke to them again about, hey, I haven't heard from you, and I believed I would. So yesterday I listened to your episode. Then today when I got the email that I was officially rejected on the grounds of having lower test scores than other candidates. Oh boy, howdy, I'm still feeling very negative about it, and that's putting it politely. So just for any technology job out there, don't say you believe in diversity. If you're going to have a standardized test that you have for all applicants, that you then reject people based only on the test score and not actually talking to them. So I have a lot of negativity towards this sort of thing. I was the student who had the accommodations in the IEP in school, including longer to take, standardized tests, and generally I can pass them. All right, there you go. Thanks for a great show, guys. Bye.
Wow. All right. So as we prepare for this test, we have to consider a few things. Ben, I was not aware that standardized testing happened during job applications. I guess that's primarily because I've never changed jobs, really. I don't know how common it is, really, seriously, because we've been working kind of one job for 14 to 16 years, depending on how you judge time. I'm assuming it's a common thing for a lot of people out there. I wasn't able to find a lot of writing about it, a lot of news reporting about it. I've seen some things about aptitude testing, which seems to be something maybe different than this kind of standardized test that maybe a tech company would put out, at least the kind that K-Dub's experienced. I just want to know, do you have any experience with a standardized test for a job, or do you know anything about it?
Yeah, so things are going to differ in many parts of the world, right? That's the first thing to realize. And K-Dubs, I think you're calling from the United States. So one thing that we can note, that you note, K-Dubs, is that intelligence is not directly, one's intelligence, right, or one's aptitude is not directly related to the skill set of one taking a standardized test, right? It's a very, it is a pretty well-defined skill set, yeah? And that's why there are allowances in some educational spheres to say, hey, we know this kid knows it, let's just not rush them, right? Or something like that. A test overall, the main message of our question about the hazards of standardized testing was simply that a standardized test is based often on simply unsound assumptions, right? Like there is no definition, a workable definition of intelligence nor sentience, sapience. So how can one test for something one doesn't understand? In direct response to your question, Matt, there are jobs that do have what we consider standardized test. For instance, any job in the trades that requires a certification, right? They're not grappling necessarily with philosophical questions. They're saying, do you know how to weld, right?
Yeah.
Can you work the transmission on this truck? Those I think are fair because they're skill oriented, right? They're knowledge and skill
Yes.
oriented.
And that's what I wanted to bring up. We have before on our team pretty recently, I think. Yes, asked for people applying to be an editor, right? A producer and editor of audio podcasts to take, you send the same audio files to several people and you ask them to create a cut of something so you can listen back to it, right? And what that's doing is just displaying the skills that they already have when they're applying for this somewhat higher level position, to be someone who's actually editing and sound designing something. But I wouldn't give that kind of test to somebody who's just starting out, maybe coming out of college, or just an entry level position. I would expect that person to be learning a lot on the job. And it's just weird to me that K-Dubs applied for an entry level position where I imagine there would be a ton of learning in that first couple of months, year, or whatever long it would be. That you wouldn't have to pass with a bunch of skills coming in. I don't know. It's just that felt weird to me. But then I found on aptitude-test.com a short little list of, I think it was about 10. Yeah, it's 10 companies like Pfizer, Amazon, Boeing, Toyota, Nestle, a bunch of these companies that do have aptitude testing of some sort, and it's usually based on the position that's being sought. So it's a specialized test, like a certification, right? But in this case, it's just a test that you get simply for applying, and you just have to show your skills.
Yeah, but how are those skills defined? I mean, that's a tricky question because, look, the big issue with, I feel like every time I talk about standardized testing, I point to something else and say, here's the big issue. But fairly phrased, another big issue is simply this. It is relatively easy to test someone for specific skills, right? Specific experiential things. It is enormously difficult to test people for the most important part of intelligence, which is the ability to learn. You can't really, that's why interviews are key a lot of times with managers. The idea that you could meet someone in the world of coding, right, and programming. This happens all the time. There's someone who is whip crack smart, right, and they know a language back and forth, and they can program it all day, and they're fast, and their mistakes are within an acceptable margin of error. But they cannot learn a new pursuit. They cannot learn outside of that dimension. They cannot add to the encyclopedic knowledge they already possess. And this means that the golden goose there is someone who already has their chops, ideally, and is a fast learner and is able to incorporate new things and synthesize those new discoveries into their existing process. Now that sounds very much like a corporate malarkey, right? Corporate. I'm like full of jargon here, but the point stands. So the question is, without knowing more about what you are being tested for, K-Dubs, the point is that it sounds like they're testing for some sort of baseline, right? That they honestly probably worked on with a consulting company or some sort of third-party entity. And that baseline, whatever it is, I would wonder if that was explained to test takers beforehand, because that does make a measurable impact on testing. The studies are there. If people know what they are being tested for, then it will affect their performance. The second thing I would ask is it testing for an ability to learn? And then who makes a course? What happened is people took the test and they were probably classified in very wide, rough buckets maybe like a green, yellow, red color coding, something like that, or, just these like margins, ballpark numbers. That's almost the same thing as a 3 different stacks of paper, right? Each one a resume. And then when someone is hiring based on that or determining a pool of candidates, I would question whether there's anything to stop somebody from putting their favorite applicant on the top of the pile. It's very easy to do. And like, to take your example, Matt, I hope this doesn't happen. I doubt it will in our endeavors, but it's quite possible that someone could come and top down you and say, look, this might not be the best editor right now out of the gate, but this is my friend's cousin's godfather's son's podiatrist niece, and they are a quick learner, and they deserve a shot. So make it happen. But this question about standardized testing, I gotta ask, man, is it? I think overall, it's right. It's okay for companies to require some kind of uniform test, but I'd be very hesitant to take the results of a single test alone as a clear indication of someone's suitability. It just doesn't seem like that's the entirety of the puzzle. You know what I mean?